Welcome to Boots on the Ground, brought to you by Retail Strategies. Today, like every day, we're diving into the world of retail real estate as we recap the 2024 ICSC Las Vegas Conference. I'm Ryder Richards, joined today by Elliott Cook and John Mark Boozer, as they discuss the latest trends, deal-making creativity, and the evolving dynamics of the retail industry. Now, whether you're a developer, investor, or a municipal leader, this recap gives you an idea of what the largest retail conference says about the direction of the retail and real estate industries. We're going to talk a little bit about the ICSC out in Vegas. How are you guys doing today?
Hey, Ryder. Doing well. Excited about this one today. Happy to be here with you.
Yeah, absolutely, Ryder. Looking forward to this one. Vegas is always a big show and a lot to talk about after.
Cool. Very cool. Let's start with something general, something like, how did you feel about the show? Was the energy good? I know that since COVID, things have been sort of up and down, figuring out what was going to be happening. What was y'all's overall impression?
I was really encouraged by it. It's been going to the show for quite a few years now. And obviously coming back from the pandemic, we have had lower turnout in the years coming out of that. I felt like, I don't know what the numbers they were shooting for, but certainly it felt like things were back to normal. Obviously, I think our world is back to normal, and certainly the show reflected that. It was great to see a lot of people. I know some firms are sending less of their staff, but there was definitely a large contingent and a lot of retailers and developers looking to do deals.
John Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if you happen to find yourself at the Wynn on Sunday afternoon during all the sessions, there were some points where I couldn't even walk. So, whether there were less people or not, I think the quality was there. I think that people showed up, people were involved. And, I think the big kind of two words that come to mind from this show is positivity and creativity. And I think everyone I talked to was very positive. And a lot of the deal points or information I got was pretty creative, a little bit outside of the norm, which we'll get into some more. But it was a good show. I think people showed up to be productive.
Yeah, that sounds, quite interesting. It's sort of a compelling idea there that creativity is part of the deal-making cycle now. John Mark, I know we're talking about maybe getting that in the future. Can we follow up on that right now?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that people are looking to get deals done or are considering new developments / acquisitions now in a way that they wouldn't have in the past. They're looking at markets, they're looking at existing shopping centers or standalone centers. They're looking at potential deals that, take longer, a little bit more difficult, or even deals that might not have penciled in the past that might be in smaller markets or that kind of thing, because vacancy is so low right now and there's still demand for retailers to expand. And so these developers and these owners have to get creative and look outside the box, get creative thinking about finance and get creative thinking about layouts, how they're going to do things. And they're considering things as long as there is a potential return or potential upside for them that might not have been considered in the past, which is pretty exciting. There are some people that I spoke with that are considering an acquisition or considering a development that frankly surprised me in a good way, because it was something that I didn't think would be something that would generate a return or even generate interest from some people, especially in smaller tertiary markets.
Oh, very exciting. Yeah. It's always nice to see the industry. Do you feel like the industry, this kind of shakeup is not only creating creativity, but, possibly breaking some ground for things that will continue to happen in the future? Or do you think this is sort of a bubble that we're in right now?
I think I'm going to give you, I think a third point that comes to my head is that things in this industry are starting to move faster. And Elliott, you can attest to this, I'm sure, but for a very long time, things were very the norm and retail real estate was very set in its ways. You had people doing one thing or two things the same way for a very long time. And especially now, since COVID is in the distance, things continue to keep changing, and it's not exactly a bad thing. I just think that the marketplace as a whole is getting much more dynamic and a faster pace of change.
Very cool. Yeah, Elliott, do you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I agree with John Mark. I do think things are changing. I think the world that we live in and a lot of our consumer patterns certainly changed. And like John Mark mentioned, there definitely is more of a focus. he talked about that there's about 4% vacancy in existing retail shopping centers currently. That includes those dead and tired malls, which make up a big chunk of that 4%. So it's really hard to find good real estate. And so, like he mentioned, trying to get more creative and finding new sites, looking at new markets. Certainly, when we think about the how a market performed over the last 3 to 4 years, a lot of new storefronts, a lot of new layouts, like John Mark mentioned. Obviously, the necessity for a drive-through if you're a quick service restaurant or you're someone in food and beverage. That's really evolving and changing and really serving potentially a new customer, or a customer that was not necessarily on the forefront of a lot of these retailers' minds back in 2018. So yeah, it's really, really exciting. I think certainly there are extreme challenges when we think about financing. There are extreme challenges when we think about labor, but there are a lot of opportunities out there. And I think the general consensus was that excitement and that awareness of the resilience of our asset class and our industry. And I think you're going to see more of that in the years to come. And so that was definitely a big takeaway for me.
Thanks. Yeah, that's good.
As it pertains to the show, I really had kind of two takeaways. The first is I met with a lot of investment funds, a lot of asset management groups, and everyone that I met with, without saying who they are, every one of them expressed an interest in a plan to raise a fund to buy more retail centers and to buy or single tenant retail property over the next year to 18 months. I can tell you that the investment groups, they feel that retail is a very strong asset class. Doesn't mean it is the best, but it is a really strong asset class. And you're going to continue to see investment in that, whether that's some groups are going strictly after distressed properties. And there's a lot of groups that's what they want. They want to find those kind of older centers and the, kind of dated retail corridors across America. There's a lot of groups going after that. Other groups are trying to find, CVSs that are closing and some of these single tenant properties, big lots and things like that, across the country as well. But the point being, the financial groups are out there are all feeling confident in the future of retail. And for that reason, they're investing in it, which is going to continue to make, the market strong. And for that reason, I think retail is something we should all be pretty bullish on going forward. And that's something, for our clients who might be listening, this is something we put in our report from the show, kind of talking about how, from an investor confidence standpoint, I feel very strong about our industry. Whether there may be some closures, maybe there's some cooling in consumer spending habits and things like that, the industry as a whole is strong. And I think that's going to, continue on through the rise and fall of interest rates and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. At the show, I spoke with a couple of investors and a couple of buyers that are working on some of the cities that I am working in. And I will say in all the markets and all the different areas I've, looked that I work with, the vacant centers and the distressed centers, the number is decreasing. People are buying them up. People are redeveloping them. And I think that goes back to the positivity of, hey, let's make a deal. Let's purchase something, and the creativity of looking at where others might have missed or overlooked in the past.
It's simple economics. I mean, it costs less to rehab a older center than it does to build a brand new one. We all know that interest rates are high. We all know construction costs are up. We all know material costs are up and have been for a very long time. Well, what makes more sense? Some of those traditional centers, that are in need of some love and are in need of, a re-tenanting opportunity. If these tenants can't, these retailers can't find good spaces in some of these other areas, well, maybe there are some other areas within the market that they should reconsider. Maybe there are some underutilized strips or underutilized real estate that someone can come in, invest in, and that become, breathes new life into that corridor or into that center itself. So you're seeing a lot of that. And then obviously the single tenant and kind of, small unanchored multi-tenant type development as well. So, if you have that in your market, certainly should be trying to, consider, is it getting highest and best use? Who's the owner? What's the plan for the owner? This might be, if you have good relationships with some of those maybe family-owned pieces of property that are underutilized currently, it might be worth talking to those property owners and seeing if they would be in a disposition type, mindset, as there is a lot of appetite around that property currently.
Is there anything else that y'all encountered at the show that stood out to you?
Yeah, the number one takeaway from the show for me, I've been going to this show for quite a few years now. The number one thing that I noticed was the commitment by municipalities, regional organizations, economic development groups, statewide entities who are now realizing the focus and the need to have a presence at ICSC or have representation at ICSC. I cannot tell you, the first ICSC I ever went to, most of the cities were in the very back of Central Hall where there's very little foot traffic and they weren't really leaving their booths. Now they're kind of scattered across all of the conference halls. You're seeing a lot more people walking around that are representing the public sector. And I think that really just shows what the future of retail development looks like. Now, public utilities, obviously a lot of our clients and a lot of, public sector people are realizing how important retail and retail recruitment and retention is in each of their individual markets. It was glaringly obvious, and it has never in the past been glaringly obvious to me, the role of the public sector as it pertains to ICSC. Ironically, a couple of years ago, ICSC rebranded, as we all know, from the International Council of Shopping Centers to Innovating Commerce Serving Communities. Well, that showed itself, in my opinion, at the 2024 Vegas show. That all plays into exactly everything we've been hearing for a while, that it now takes public incentives or public-private partnerships to make these deals pencil. A lot of communities and a lot of regional organizations are recognizing that and now want to have a seat at the table. And certainly developers, landlords, property owners, and retailers are willing and very much wanting them to be a part of that process as well. So if anyone's listening to this, they don't have that relationship or they've never considered that, the time is now, because a lot of the markets you're competing against are doing that. And that just felt very obvious to me. And it was probably my number one takeaway.
Yeah, Elliott, I'll echo you on that as the one that is doing the representing of a lot of these cities and a lot of these municipalities, along with the rest of the team. I think the openness and the receptiveness to what you said by developers, retailers, landlords is very nicely received and very welcome, because in the past, people have been more closed off or a little bit more curious or more difficult when it comes to understanding the role of cities in retail deals, in development. And I think that the openness, the willingness, the communication has certainly improved on the private sector side. And it's very welcome and honestly has proven itself to be helpful already.
Excellent. Yeah. And as people who work day in, day out, retail strategies is both dealing with municipalities and real estate brokerage retailers. We're in between all of these things. So I think we're kind of at a perfect juncture to be able to help people connect those dots when they need to. So if the city wants to go out there, awesome. But of course, we also go out there to represent our communities. So thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you, Ryder. This has been great. The industry is changing, like John Mark mentioned. It's always exciting. It's resilient. It's going to continue to evolve. You're certainly going to hear negatives. There are plenty. We could do an entire podcast on the inherent challenges to retail development, but there's a lot of reason to be bullish on this sector. And we're all excited to see how it continues to change and evolve and serve our clients.
Perfect.
Agreed.
All right. Well, thanks again, guys. And until next time. That wraps up this episode of Boots on the Ground. We hope you enjoyed our quick little trip into the 2024 ICSC Las Vegas Conference, and perhaps you came away with a few valuable insights on the future of retail real estate. Now, this conversation between us continued into some broader trends and strategies, so stay tuned for that on our next episode where we can examine those insights and really some specific retailer shifts. Of course, as always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. For more resources and information, visit us at retailstrategies.com. Until next time, Keep your boots on the ground and your eyes on the horizon.